The best Washington National this season is on the block. His name is Josh Bell. I am Josh Neighbors of Locked On Nationals. This is Lindsay Crosby, also of Locked On MLB Prospects. It is a crossover. We're going to be discussing the trade value of one Josh Bell. And Lindsay, it's shocking to think this, but Josh Bell has been the best Washington National from pillar to post this year. There are so many things to like about him, but I guess, let's start this conversation here. The Nationals had a chance to maybe give him a deal this offseason because he had a really nice 2021, I thought. A rough start, but he ends up hitting 261, 347, 476 slash line, 823 OPS, 125 OPS plus. For those who don't know, I believe 100 is the normal kind of major league average. He hit 27 home runs and drove in 88 overall last year. And so let's start there. I thought that warranted an extension. And I thought for the Nationals, it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? You can trade him at some point, maybe, but also it's just nice to have a guy around who's a vet. He's just there. Like, you don't have to worry about first base every single day. It's taken care of. And for a team that has to worry about a whole lot of positions every day, because there's not a whole lot of continuity right now, not a whole lot of, yes, we know it's happening there, kind of just something nice to have, but they didn't do it.
You had an opportunity, and you think that it wouldn't have been that expensive, right? So he's in second year of arbitration. He was on a $6 million deal last year. I think it's $6.3 million. And so the thought process is you buy out his final year of arbitration, you buy out 2 or 3 free agent years. That gets you to age 32. That gives you time for a prospect to finish developing and come up. Or if you end up liking him and you think his profile ages well, you can re-sign him a little bit later. But instead, 1 year, $10 million contract in arbitration. And what he's doing now is he's making a case for the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, first base is a very difficult position, especially if you look in that National League this year. I mean, think about the guys who are there. Paul Goldschmidt, pretty clear, I'd say, front runner right now for National League MVP.
Alonso.
Pete Alonso's had a great season. CJ Cron has had a really good year. Freddie Freeman gets out of bed and hits 300. I mean, that's what this guy does. Eric Hosmer's had a really nice year. Matt Olson, obviously, for the Braves, and then Rowdy Tellez, a different kind of player, I guess, for the Brewers. But like the National League is really stacked at that first base position. But Josh Bell, I know he's not going to get the respect in the All-Star voting. Obviously, Goldie is the guy you're going to go with, but he has been phenomenal.
I'd put Bell number 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at a best first baseman. I mean, look, he's not the player that Pete Alonso is. He's not the player, obviously, that Freddie Freeman is. But in terms of seasons, I mean, one of our good friends, Matt Wyrick, had this up the other day from NBC Sports Washington. He said, if you look at the numbers, like just a little bit better than Freddie Freeman. Now, nobody's here saying that he is a better player than Freddie Freeman, but you got to respect the numbers. And also, we're at 81 games at this point. It's half a season. And he has been, and for a guy who's, kind of a power hitting first baseman, how often are we talking about those guys being really consistent? We're not. Really, there's variance a lot of times at that spot. He's been consistent from pillar to post. I think consistency, number one, is something that's going to help raise his trade value.
Yeah, he actually leads the major leagues. He's played in all 81 games this season. I believe he's actually started all 81 games.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, 318, 399, 514 is your slash line. OPS plus of 163, whereas the MLB average is 100. You adjust that up a little bit for your first baseman as an offensive first position, but still, I mean, 163, he's been a top 5 National League first baseman, and he's doing it on an expiring contract. And he's doing it underrated. He's doing it with a new baby at home. And I think there's something to be said about the players when their performance drops when they have a new baby at home. So shout out Josh Bell for making it happen with a crying baby at home every night. But it's just something where to do this, to be on pace to beat last year's RBI number on a team that is objectively not as talented as last year's team tells you he's taken his hitting to another level. On base percentage, 50 points better. Slugging percentage, 40 points better. Batting average, close to 50 points better. And like you said, 81 game sample size. We're halfway in. These metrics have stabilized. This is not BABIP luck. This is not a hot streak. This is Josh Bell. This is Josh Bell has turned a corner, and this is who he is as a player. And you kind of wish you had locked him up before this happened.
Yeah, I mean he's been fantastic, and it's really funny for a guy they call Tinkerbell because of how often he has adjusted and changed his swing. Stability is not normally what you think, but it seems like he's actually found it and he stayed with it. And another thing I want to bring up here, Lindsay, is this: the splits against righties and lefties. This year he's hitting 292 with a 371 OBP and a 500 slugging percentage and 871 OPS against lefties. Now it's not as good against not as good as he is against righties, but still, that's awesome. Those are awesome numbers against lefties. You go against the righties, he's even better. 333 batting average, a 416 on base, a 522 slugging, and a 937 OPS. 7 homers, 27 RB. Now, I will say the homers actually pretty even from both sides of the plate. And his home run numbers are a little bit down. He's only on pace for about 24 this year. We'll see there. But still, 27 RBIs against the lefties, 27 against the righties, 20 against lefties. But this is a point I want to ask you about. How much value does the switch hitting bring? Because this is a guy that, no matter who is pitching now, you've got no problem with him out there unless it's a guy who owns him. But like he's killing everybody right now. He's really making everybody pay. He's not discriminating. And that's something I really think is, obviously switch hitters you expected a bit more. This is a little bit different. He's consistent from both sides of the plate. He is well above average from both sides of the plate. And I think that to me might be the most pivotal piece of where his value lies.
Yeah. When you look at the trade deadline and you're going out and you're trying to figure out who can we bring in to our team that gives us the edge and pushes us over the top, you're looking for little things like we can force them to burn a specific reliever late in the game by having Josh Bell come up to bat third in the inning. His averages better against righties. His counting stats better against lefties. He's got 124 plate appearances against lefties, 216 against righties. Yet the home run numbers are almost even. The RBIs are almost even. So it becomes a situation for an opposing manager. You go from how am I going to get him out to how am I going to let him hurt me? And that subtle change right there as a team who's been to the World Series somewhat recently for both of us, that can be the difference in winning or losing a game and a series and a championship. And so something like that is going to give you a premium when it comes to the trade deadline over a guy that is a right-handed bat that can't hit a lefty that you'll have to platoon or pinch hit for him late in a game, especially with the small benches you carry in the postseason. So dramatically increases his value, and a guy that I genuinely think is going to get one of the better returns on the trade market this year.
All right, quick word from our sponsors, then we'll go that direction, talk about where he could end up going. But once again, our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Blue Nile and BlueNile.com. If you guys want that special piece of jewelry for that special somebody, look no further than Blue Nile and BlueNile.com. Whether it's a tennis bracelet, necklace, ring, make that moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go there today. BlueNile.com. Locked On listeners get a special deal. You get $50 off a purchase of $500 or more. This is a podcast exclusive. Use the code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured. It ships free and arrives in a discreet package that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace at BlueNile.com today. Also, once again, that discreet packaging, that's great stuff. You want to show up, make sure nobody knows what it is. They won't. So BlueNile.com today, promo code Locked On. All right, so this is, Nationals fans, this is when we get excited. What they're trying to look for. What can they, what are we targeting here? And nationally, I just mentioned this, there's actually not a whole lot of teams in the National League that desperately need that first baseman, right? You think about think about who the playoff teams are right now. All right. The Padres do not need one with Eric Hosmer. The Dodgers do not need one with Freddie Freeman. The Cardinals do not need one with Paul Goldschmidt. The Brewers do not need one with Rowdy Tellez. The Mets do not need one with Pete Alonso. The Braves do not need one with Matt Olson. So really, it feels like, Lindsay, we're going to begin looking at the American League. That is where you might see these teams, need somebody at that position, because the thing about the teams that are trying to compete, I mean, and one that we've mentioned up top, Minnesota could really use a guy like a Josh Bell for his versatility. Obviously, can DH and play first base too. So I think, is that where you want to start? We're going to start with the Twins, or you start with the Blue Jays?
Start with the Twins.
All right,
Let's go
so
ahead and do that.
Twins.
Yeah,
Let's hear it.
And so the thing here for me is they have Luis Arias, been very good, but I feel like defensively he's being wasted a bit at first. He can play third, he can play left, and then the big thing here is by bringing in Josh Bell, it gives you some more lefty-righty balance to the lineup. Josh Bell would give you 3 of 9 hitters in the Minnesota lineup that would be lefties. So when I'm looking at these trades, the comps that I have, let's go back to last year. Anthony Rizzo gets moved to the Yankees, and then Nelson Cruz moves from the Twins to the Rays. And both of them, you get back 1 or 2 top 10 prospects, and one of them is probably close to MLB ready. For the Nelson Cruz trade, that was Joe Ryan, MLB player right there, went up and started playing right away. So for the Twins, I'm looking at a guy like right-hand pitcher Simeon Woods Richardson. We mentioned last show, you're looking for pitching. You want a younger pitcher, and ideally, because you're not an expiring deal, and like you said, smaller market because a lot of teams are set at first base, you're not going to get a top 100 prospect. But you can get a top 10 prospect for the system. Simeon Woods is a number 7 overall prospect for the Twins, 21 years old. And I think what he does is he raises the floor for this team because he profiles well as a number 4, number 5 starter, possibly middle inning relief. But the thought process is he just has to do a little bit of work, maybe improve the fastball a bit, and he could be a number 4 starter for you. He's a guy that's in AA right now, 2-3, 3.40 ERA in 11 games. 19 walks to 53 strikeouts in 53 innings. So, 9 strikeouts per 9 innings kind of tells you number 4, number 5, but he can put up innings. He can give you a base level of competency. And because he's already in AA and he's there for the second time, he spent a little bit of time there last year. He's a guy that can be contributing at the MLB level by the end of 2023. So he fits the window.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting because to me, when I always thought about these trades, it's weird. Like, is he a rental or is he a player that you now have the opportunity to re-sign, right? Now, I guess that might be a bit more NBA brain of me because it's not something, we don't see it all the time in baseball. Typically, you want to take advantage of the control that's left, and obviously he's got none of them. He's going to be a free agent. But I think he's a player that if it goes somewhere and works out, like I don't believe his next contract is going to be astronomically high. I think he's a really good player, but I actually still think he'll probably, I feel like at the end of the day, he made a contract. I'm like, I'm not sure he's going to be making enough money. Now we'll see. But I think actually Josh Bell might have some value as a player who you could re-sign. So like the pitching depth, maybe I would say this, maybe snag me a position player from lower down as well. Just give me a little extra something there, but you're on the right track with definitely, throw in piece, but you're definitely on the right track with the pitcher. Let's go to the next one here, Lindsay.
Okay. Before we do that,
go ahead. Yeah.
Quick thought. If you're a team like the Twins and Josh Bell is as good as he has pitched as he has played all year, and you think he's an amazing guy, obviously you tried to re-sign him, but if you can't re-sign him, give him a qualifying offer. Worst case scenario, he declines the qualifying offer and you get a draft pick in compensation, or he signs it and you have one more year of his services. And if you can't come to a reasonable deal on an extension, you ship him out at the trade deadline next year. So I think there's a little bit of that NBA style contract stuff you can play if you're a team like the Twins who don't have an obvious candidate, assuming Carlos Correa opts out, an obvious candidate for the qualifying offer.
Yeah, and you know what's this is so interesting. The second one's very interesting that you put. So Toronto,
Mhm.
but I mean, obviously we know Vlad Guerrero Jr. is there, and this is kind of the same thing as like we just talked about Luis Ariz over there at first base in Minnesota. Yes, but you can move him, right? So Josh Bell would go in, and this is so Nelson Cruz we talked about before. Like I would hesitate with Nelson Cruz for him to be my DH because. Am I maximizing that DH spot with Nelson Cruz? I don't know. I feel like if Josh Bell is a DH, that is maximizing that DH spot, right? Because he's hitting whoever's out there, and also I'm taking away the defense part. He's
Mhm.
not very good at defense. I'll be honest. It's not an enjoyable watch over there at first base watching Josh Bell. No disrespect, love Josh Bell, but like not great to watch. Just Josh Bell focusing on the hitting, kind of like this. So at first I was like, where's he going here? But thought about it, kind of love this idea.
Yeah, and it's something where the Toronto doesn't have a ton of lefties in the lineup. I memean, on a given day, they start one lefty,
Hmm.
Raimel Tapia in left
Wow.
field. And for DH, what they tend to do is they just rotate the DH between different positions. So we're recording this on July 5th. The DH tonight is catcher Alejandro Kirk.
Right.
Bo Bichette was the DH last week against the Rays. It's something where they don't have a set player to take that. And then obviously Vlad Guerrero plays every single day. They rotate him through there. He DHs once a week. But if you were for some reason to lose Vlad Guerrero, he is the number 3 hitter. He is the thing that this entire offense revolves around. Josh Bell gives you a little bit of insurance if you have a short-term absence from a Vlad Guerrero. So the player that I'm looking at moving over to Washington is Otto Lopez. I've got him listed on our sheet as a shortstop, second baseman, outfielder. He was an international free agent in 2016 out of the Dominican. But I think that at worst, he's a bat first utility guy. He can play center field for you. He can play anywhere up the middle of the diamond. But he has good offensive bona fides. He won 2 minor league batting titles, 2019 in low A, 2021 in double A. I think the only thing stopping him from being a full-time starter at the big league level is just a question about how his power is going to develop. He hits too many ground balls, doesn't really have a great launch angle, but a guy that gives you flexibility to play him different places while you figure out which prospects are ready to take over at different positions, gives you a lot of utility and versatility, and then just a reliable offensive threat that can play towards the top of the lineup.
So I like this one for both ways because the Nationals desperately need just guys who can play, like guys who we think can play. They really do because there is we're talking about third base. We don't know if Carter Cuban will be the guy or not. They've got no clue if he's going to be the guy. At second base, it's been Cesar Hernandez, and I think there's a chance that they might even move on from him, but he's on a 1-year deal regardless. Luis Garcia, they think, is going to be playing shortstop for them. Outfield right now, obviously Juan Soto's out there, but Victor Robles, we're not sold on him. And that third outfield spot can always move around. We talked about moving Yadiel Hernandez. There's been a guy out there a lot for them in that spot. So I think the flexibility is good because it's going to fill some holes for them. The last one I want to let's get. You got anything else in Toronto before we move on or no?
Good. We're good.
All right. So the last one here, we mentioned San Diego, but this one I like because we're talking about multiple guys here that could be in this trade. This is good for San. I mean, this is good for every team that gets Josh Bell. Like you're very happy if your team gets Josh Bell, generally speaking. But this Josh Bell in transition there, he could be their DH. He could play, depending on whatever you want to do with Hosmer, you can play him out there at first base some days, whatever it is. But this could make sense for them just to add another bat in the lineup. Obviously, right now the big thing for them is they are missing the man who is near the top of All-Star voting for the shortstop position, who has not played a game for any of the Tatis Jr.
So
and
weird.
this is a huge bat you can just place in the lineup because here's the thing: nobody's taking the Padres seriously. They're having a good year, but nobody takes them seriously in the West because of where they're positioned right now. But I'll tell you what, that pitching looks pretty serious to me this year. That pitching to me looks like it could be pretty serious. Can you add a bat like Josh Bell to supplement what you're losing right now? This is one of those at first I was like thinking, interesting, but kind of like it the more I thought about it.
Yeah, and here's why I like it. So San Diego right now solidly in the second wild card. Okay,
Right.
2.5 games up from the third. They're a game behind Atlanta for the tops in the wild card in the National League. And then at DH, they're 29th in the league in offensive production.
Mm,
Luke Voigt's been the primary DH. He's been
yeah.
hurt quite a bit. He's batting 147 with a 599 OPS. So I like the fit for the Padres. Also, we know the Padres love to make trades. This is every year it feels like at the trade deadline, they're shipping pieces in and out just to do it. So I've got two guys coming back to the Nationals in this deal. First one, number 8 prospect in the system, left-hand pitcher Robert Gasser, 23 years old. He's in high A right now, which is a little bit low for a 23-year-old, but he's a guy that doesn't have overwhelming stuff, right? The velo's not amazing. He can, when he pushes it, he's hitting 95 from a lefty. That's good. The slider's above average. It's a sharp slider. The changeup, he can spot it well. If he can figure out a curveball, I think he could go from where he is now as a number 4 or number 5 up to maybe a number 3. But the big thing is he's polished. He's doing well right now. 3.82 ERA, 94 strikeouts in 76 innings in high A, and just a guy that absolutely, like we said, raises the floor for the Nationals when it comes to the rotation, gives some of these top prospects a chance to figure it out before you're asking them to win games for the big league team, games that matter.
Yeah, I like having two guys there, especially to get a pitcher, get somebody who can play in the field, and middle infield depth is important.
Yeah.
I know Brady House. Look, Brady House has been awesome so far. Actually, we'll touch on the draft here in a second, but he's not going to play short. He's going to play third. That's where he's going. So Nationals keep building the middle infield depth. They'll be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and the second guy in the trade does that. Shortstop Victor Acosta, number 9 prospect in the system, 18 years old. So he's kind of, obviously he's not very far along in the system, but timing wise, it works out well with the timeline for the rebuild. He's a switch hitter. He can stick it short. I think he's going to be an above average at both contact and power. Probably not amazing at either one. Has a plus arm if you do end up having to move him either to the outfield because he's fast, or if you end up moving him to third, second, something like that. And just a guy with a lot of potential, but an extra piece, like you said, to kind of go up the middle and give you some additional options as Brady House and things like that figure out naturally where they're going to sort and where they're going to be.
All right, one more word from our sponsors on today's show, then we'll talk a little about the MLB draft. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Go to BetOnline today. When you guys do, sign up. It is free to do. They've got MLB baseball. They've got futures for football and basketball. They've got odds for F1, NASCAR, UFC, Bellator. They've got it for boxing as well. And also, once again, futures for basketball and football. I got soccer odds too. They've got a little MLS action. You can go do that at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. All right, so you mentioned the draft, and we're going to wrap up with that. Draft is coming up here. The Nationals have 5, 45, and 84 in their total the draft picks. Their total pool is 11 million, a little bit over 11 million, seventh largest. And that the fifth pick, it's a slot. The slot value is $6,494,300. And you mentioned right here, you have them drafting catcher Kevin Parada, and you mentioned, hey, look, they've got Keibert Ruiz, but this depth stuff seems to always work itself out. Just look at what happened last year with the Dodgers, who traded Keibert Ruiz, right? Ruiz was surplus at the time with Will Smith, or still is. Obviously Will Smith is a tremendous player. And they go and get Max Scherzer, and they go and get Trey Turner with the catcher Keibert Ruiz being part of the deal. So it's such a premium position. I think that's the rub here, right, Lindsay, is that it's such a good position, and you're drafting one of the best that you can. And so there is some value to that, even though you actually might not ever play a whole lot for your major league team.
Yeah, and it's something where by far the riskiest profile in the draft is prep pitcher, but after that it's catcher, and they bust at a higher rate. So obviously, one, you need more of those prospects, but then two, look at the timeline of you have a Ruiz already in right now.
Yeah.
You go and you combine that with Parada, who's coming out of college, who's probably he's not even 21 yet. So he's still on that 3 to 4 year time frame, and he's got some defensive polish you want him to do. If he sticks at catcher, it's a problem you don't necessarily have to even think about for 3 or 4 years. And by then you're getting to the end of Ruiz's team control and it's time to make a decision. He gives you flexibility to do that. And then in the meantime, he's one of the more accomplished pure hitters in the entire group and has some of the better power of the top 7. So the good thing about picking at 5 is there's a clear top 7 in this draft with third baseman Cam Collier, Kevin Parada, some prep players, Elijah Green, Tamar Johnson, Jackson Holiday, Drew Jones, and then the shortstop Brooks Lee from Cal Poly. It's a clear top 7. So you get one of those top premium talents. And it's not just me. A lot of the draft folks, the prospect folks, they see like how much work Washington's done on Kevin Parada as far as bringing him in, talking to his team, going scouting him in person. And so to me, it's something where, yes, you double up on top prospects there, but 1, position isn't as important in the first round. 2, it's a position that's likely to bust at a higher rate than a lot of others. And 3, you've had success taking catchers and moving them somewhere else. His name was Bryce Harper.
Right.
And so go for the best talent that you can get at 5. Somebody who's signable, who has good power, has good contact ability, and figure out what to do with them down the road if that problem even comes up.
Yeah, and I would say if that doesn't work out, I would go outfield next. I think that's I know people think still like just horde middle infield, but I think they have to go outfield. And there's a lot of good outfielders in this crop. So I think it's interesting is, we're not, it sounds like we're not going to see a pitcher be taken, the top 10 maybe. I mean, Lindsay, is there a chance we're not going to see a pitcher in the top 10?
There's absolutely a chance. That's something. So since the draft's been around in 1965, that's never happened. The closest we came was in 2019. Nick Lodolo was 7th overall out of TCU to the Reds. And that's the only time that that was the closest we've come to never having a pitcher in the top 10. But you have a situation where so many top college pitchers have been hurt. You've got questionable status for Kumar Rocker. We don't know where he's going to go, but there's medical questions. And the top prep pitcher, Dylan Lesko, tore his UCL and had Tommy John in the spring. So there's just not a lot of guys to go. And when I was doing some of the draft previews, I've been throwing up at Locked On MLB Prospects, we're thinking maybe 13 or 12. The Mets have 2 first-round picks, 11 and 14, so they can afford to go with a prep pitcher at 11 maybe. But there's a very good chance we don't have one in the top 10. And never happened before, uncharted territory, but this is going to be a hitter-heavy draft. Go ahead and take one of the better ones there at 5, and then be prepared to clean up and get one of the top college pitchers at 45.
All right, very interesting. We'll see what happens. Lindsay, appreciate your time. This was very fun. Let people know where they can find you and your work and all of its variety.
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. My show, Locked On MLB Prospects, is available on Twitter at Locked On Farm, wherever you get your podcasts, and go subscribe to us on YouTube. We're that close to 1,000 subscribers. We're trying to get there in time for our live show. The night of the MLB draft, we're going to go live and recap the first round.
Very nice. Very exciting. You guys can find me on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find the show at LO_Nationals. You guys can find the show itself wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. All right, so we covered it all. Lindsay, it's always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh.